Jim Joyce. I'm
Hey, hey,
purposely
hey.
being a little bit quieter. In beautiful Lausanne. There's a lake behind me, and you probably can't hear. There's actually cows and cowbells, So at the
Good.
wonderful TechTour conference, I like the change. I think you're growing some here.
Trying to
Trying to be more sophisticated. Is that what
a
it
little
is?
more sophisticated. Yeah, a bit. This is the 20-year midlife crisis.
Amazing. Yeah, I don't know, a quick shout out. It's always, I've been coming here, I came a couple of years. So, all the usual crowd, Roberto, Steve Seuntjens,
Wait, so
Marco,
you're at Tech
Tech
Tour.
Tour,
It
Tech
usually
Tour
takes place
conference,
in Switzerland,
Lausanne,
right?
Lausanne, Switzerland. Yeah. Um,
And
so we got to
Poland.
keep it tight. There's, dinner being served soon. And I think for the
Excellent.
first time. So, but I'm super excited. For our guest to join in. Who would have thought that a digital therapeutics entrepreneur would go into politics? So we're super excited, even though we're a very non-political show, but we're excited to host you, Owen.
Eugene,
It's been a
Jim, good
while.
to see you. Happy Wednesday. It's been a long time. You look like you're in a beautiful place right now, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We are two different beautiful places. You got, Jim Joyce with Dublin, and I was showing before we let you in. I'm in Lausanne, Switzerland. There's cows behind me, and so we're recording right here from here.
And you can
Yeah, from
So
connect
all
over
over the
the
world.
cows. You can connect
What's
over
that,
the cow.
Jim? Yeah,
You
he
can
jumped over
connect
the
over the
couch.
cows. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
can you guys hear the bells, or it's only I can hear them?
No, it's only
Okay,
going to distract you.
it's
I'm locked in. Yeah, yeah.
maybe it's all in my head. Maybe there is no
There's
cowbells,
no
but anyway.
bells, Eugene. Yeah, like we need to get you on the digital therapy, I think.
There you go.
Exactly, for sure.
Yeah.
But listen, welcome. We've been, I can't believe I think this is episode 170, and it took us this long to get you on because we've known each other for many years at this point. And, for our millions of listeners and viewers, take us through, through your life journey. And then, as usual, Jim and I, us, we're not shy. We'll interrupt.
Well, no, I appreciate that. Well, so speaking of cows, let me start there. Like I grew up in a
Okay.
town called Patton, Maine. So it's in the woods of Maine,
Yeah.
900 miles north. I mean, 100 miles north of Bangor, 900 people. And this picture you see behind me is Mount Katahdin, and that was the view we saw. I lived about a mile to the right of this picture. There was a cow farm my great uncle owned right there.
Oh, wow.
So that I had to make the tie of the cow. So I grew up there. Yeah, go ahead, Eugene.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, grew up there.
How many cows? How many cows?
I didn't count them, so I don't know, but there are plenty of them. My dad was a logger, so like in the forestry industry. I was a first generation college student myself.
Wow.
Well, went from there to the University of Maine, studied engineering. That was probably the most transformational time of my life. Like I really learned a lot about how to think about problem and solution, met some really important people, including my co-founder of MedRhythms, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot about leadership there, and it really kind of changed the trajectory of my life. Did sales and marketing for a number of years, working not in healthcare, in cleaning up water from going into plants and going out of manufacturing plants. And so I've been in every paper mill in New England and a bunch of the food and beverage manufacturers for that business. Went to business school, and when I was graduating business school, I was talking to Brian Harris, who was my co-founder of MedRhythms, and he was at Spalding Rehab, and he was helping people recover faster and more effectively with how you could use rhythm and music to help people recover their walking. Brian was manually as a therapist, but people would leave and say, well, hey, Brian, there's only 2,000 of you in the world that do this. Where can I continue to get this care? Thus, I mean, we'll dive into it more, but thus MedRhythms was born. Launched it in Boston, moved it to Maine, built it in Maine. All along, and this will connect to some of the later points, like all along, I stayed involved in higher education because of how important it was for me. I chair the board of visitors at the University of Maine, which is really our flagship university. I was on the board of trustees for a couple of years for our 7 universities across the state. So my world has been Maine and health tech, basically, and entrepreneurship, all in parallel tracks.
But wait, in your family, so did you grow up like working in farming or like in your uncle's land, or like did you have a lot of kids in your family?
So my grandmother was one of 16, and they all live within 30 miles. And so there was a lot of family
One
around.
of 16.
Yeah, one of 16, and so like relatives, cousins were everywhere. I mean, I did odd jobs. I picked rocks in potato fields. I worked at the hardware store. I did a bunch of things. Oh, I remember, Jim, I was 16 years old. My dad had a log truck. So he was in the forestry industry, had a truck. And on the
Right.
Saturdays, I would help him do maintenance work on the truck. He fixed the truck. And so we were changing a truck tire, like take the rim out, put a new rim on, right? Like it's like some heavy duty stuff. We had somewhere to be, and it was taking me twice as long as it should. And I remember my dad, like this, he's an imposing guy. Like he came over my shoulder and he's like, "Look, Owen, like you're gonna have to go to college and get a degree." I guess it's not.
But it's amazing, right? Because we always kind of think about especially kind of growing up, kind of looking at your parents, and the fact that you were sort of pushed and recognized that, hey, this is not for you, go, right?
Yeah.
Making that way. So
I mean, my dad was a remarkable leader. He was the high school baseball coach, and they did really well. He could always get a lot out of people that maybe didn't have talent, but he could get them to like get to the peak of their potential.
Right.
He was the guy that barely graduated high school, but like anytime, even now, I'm wrestling with some meaty thing, I go to him. He always has like a one-liner
nuggets.
that
Right.
cuts through it, and it's like the wisdom that you need. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, I wish life was that easy for everyone else. That's my
Right. Like
point.
the one-liner he gave you
Guys-
as you were trying to fix the truck.
Yeah,
Can
exactly.
can I just interrupt with this just for a second? Just a one-liner. It was crazy. I opened up Instagram today, and I for me it resonated completely. Tough times come and go. Tough people stay.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. Just we're all entrepreneurs here, right? So it's always this persistence versus stupidity discussion.
I
So
always say that about entrepreneurs. It's like people are like, oh, like they're overnight successes. I'm like, no, they just hung on until the time was right. Like,
Like, yeah, the cockroaches and the books and nuclear option.
Well, let's let's jump probably straight to the DTX. I think we can probably unwind quite a lot.
But, yeah,
Oh,
I know
go,
we're in a
Jim. I
rush.
know you're
I know
trying
we're
to
in a
build
rush.
your story. I mean, not a rush, just
Yeah.
keep it
Well,
tight.
first of all, okay, the name like McCarthy. So I'm coming from Ireland. Is there Irish or Scottish or where's the heritage?
Irish. It's Irish. My family came, the McCarthy side of the family left Ireland during the potato famine.
Okay.
Came to Canada, to New Brunswick, settled there. My grandfather, my dad's father, came across the St. John River into Maine in the 1900s, settled in Maine, became a citizen fighting World War II over in Germany. And so,
Wow.
but Irish, deep Irish. When I visited Dublin, Jim, I met a few Owen McCarthy. It's like I'm like a popular name there.
Totally. Yeah. Sometimes it's spelled with the O or the E instead of
Yeah.
And then sorry, Eugene. Last point was, I saw this. There was a famous politician, George Mitchell, which right?
Oh yeah, Maine guy. Yeah,
he's a Maine guy, right? And he is responsible, or he is a major player in the whole Irish peace process, right?
Yes.
And his story is a story of of immigration. So he was effectively like immigrants that ended up in Maine and his two adopted parents, but he was either of Irish heritage or something like that. So I was reading a story the other day and I just thought of you because he was this famous Maine politician that had all this Irish connective tissue anyway.
Yeah, and George Mitchell has been sort of a beacon of public service in the state of Maine. Like he's world renowned for that. He was on the Disney board. He was the baseball steroids guy. He's done a bunch of stuff. He was Senate Majority Leader. But in Maine, he took a bunch of money he had raised, I think, for a campaign and converted it into the Mitchell Institute Scholarship, which they give to every high school gets one of these every year for like the outstanding students. And they give out like 5 or 10 million a year in scholarships that have really been like the who's who of people that have come through. And so he's planted a lot of seeds across the state.
Fantastic.
I just want to say that I'm super impressed, Jim, that for the first time in 170 episodes, you did your homework, or you just,
Oh, easy.
or you just,
I just run. It's all fluid, man. It's
I
just all
love it.
fluid.
I love it. I love it.
Okay. So we go
You know,
into napping.
yeah, listen, I forget how many episodes of the DTX podcast, which I had Brian on. So I have a little bit of the pleasure of getting to know MedRhythms, but, rewind us back. So you meet Brian, I think you guys started the company a decade ago now, right? Which, a lot of this was kind of still early on and forming and, well, I guess storming and forming at the same time, definitely still, kind of take us back on what were you guys like thinking in the room, that how do you take this to market? How do you think about it? I mean, now everybody kind of says music is medicine. It's kind of almost like food is medicine. But, you guys were there early enough, like the champions of a lot of this. So kind of take us back into those discussions maybe a little bit. And
Yeah, I mean, so we really started, and actually we started different than where we've landed, right? We started as Brian was a clinician at Spalding, and he was getting great results, and he was seeing people were getting better faster and more effectively. I was his roommate at the time, and he kept coming to me with these videos saying like, "Oh, and like, look, here's the outcomes I'm getting."
Right.
And this is like what, for one session or two sessions, there's got to be a way to reach more people, right? Like from your hometown, my hometown, or wherever in the world. And so I started advising Brian on that question. Like, how do you take Brian and reach more people? And that was as simple as it was to start the company. We was like, oh yeah, we should be able to make it work. We actually, for the first couple of years, we started a therapy practice. Like we were like, let's train and hire more Brians. And so, that was the first step. And we started doing that. We got a contract with Spalding Rehab, which really broke us out. We started finding people and training them up. And then
did you guys bootstrap that?
Yeah,
or
no money raised then. It was like my wife was paying the bills on our side, and I think Brian's wife was on the other side. So it was not a lot of salary coming in.
Amazing. Yeah.
And 18 months in, we started to do a bunch of care, and we were getting some revenue and fully bootstrapped. And I remember going to Brian and being like, look, like, this is good. It's a small business. It's going to scale in like 100 years. So like you can run this thing, or like, let's imagine it like a new way to do this. And so that's when the digital therapeutic or the medical device was born, where we said, you know what, like, Brian, what you do for rhythmic auditory stimulation isn't algorithmic. Like, you look at someone's walking, you look at how they're doing, and you make a change in your guitar. And like, I'm like, we can recreate that. So we went and got sensors, which
that's the engineer in you started like.
Yeah, my problem solution mind. Yeah, engineering, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like sensors in. We actually got some from Lausanne initially, right? So yes, we can make another connection there. And to measure the walking in real time, a handheld device where the algorithm lives and the user interface could be, e.g. a smartphone that's locked down with a single function and a set of headphones, and like started building the product. And then fast forward today, 6 clinical trials later, 2 FDA and a Medicare code. That's in 7.5, 8 years of time.
Right.
We're selling it.
That's
all it takes.
Overnight success. Yeah. Overnight.
Yeah.
But it was impressive also. And I don't, I'm going to leave it in the comments for people to listen back to the DTX podcast, because I don't think you guys did the Universal deal then. Like, and to me, that was super impressive, right? A company such as Universal kind of recognizing the music is medicine. And so, and any kind of lessons learned through that part of the process? So sort of getting to the deal. Are you,
Yeah. So that piece was, this is not probably a great lesson, because with large companies, I always find the only way to get something done is like start with the CEO and then talk to someone, like, which is like easier said than done, right? Like, so we actually, CEO, we started with this chief operating officer and got an intro to her, and like came in guns a-blazing and said, like, here's what we're doing with music. Like, let's see if we can make a, what can you imagine? They had Motown. Could you imagine like Stevie Wonder's music being able to help people? Because we shifted in real time, all this stuff. Can we imagine like the Temptations, like these sort of things? And like, you can say like, we help people walk better and all the, like, we were making some marketing pitches to them. And I remember her looking at us being like, oh, Stevie would love this. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. You know, Stevie Wonder, right? Like,
Right.
and then, so like we got the buy-in there, and then they were like, okay, go talk to the team and like ink a deal or whatever. Right. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
18 months later, we had a deal, right? Like it took a long time,
Yeah.
even
Right.
That's
buying
your,
the executives. And because it's like, they never thought about this before. Like, what do the economics look like? What do the risks look like? Like what if we do a partnership with a pharmaceutical company? Like, are they okay with them being associated with, like, there was a lot of what ifs that we had to get them comfortable with. But I give Brian a lot of
amazing.
credit. One, like he also did a lot of evangelizing
Finally. No.
with those folks. Yeah. Brian gets a lot of credit for a lot of things, just to be clear.
On the
Like,
record now.
I think with these, like we talk about a lot, like Eugene, that these companies just don't know how to buy. Like, if you are in the space where they know how to buy something, you know, like they buy certain things for their core business, then anything that's outside of it, they don't know how to buy it, and they can't assess like the, you know, the brain, the risk brain versus the opportunity brain is all in different parts of the company, right? So you have to kind of somehow get it forward, but they just don't. Their muscles just don't work quickly, right?
Well, it's true across any, right? Yeah. It's like any institution, the value as you get bigger, as you have like processes that are set up to do what you're set up to do. And then
Right.
you record scratch that a little bit. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. And it's a lot of work. Yeah, exactly. A lot of work to do it.
Well,
and
you
then
need
it's
like you like a med rhythm inside the company to get the rhythm.
Yeah.
But
I
you
mean,
know,
I imagine the world, this is a tangent, but like with what's happened with AI and how it's changing how we operate, like
Yeah.
every company now is going to have to figure out how to do new things more rapidly, faster.
Right.
And that's going to be a lot of opportunity, a lot of challenging dislocation out there.
if I heard the two letters AI one more time at the conference here, or any conference for that matter, I mean, it's crazy. You would think it's the only two letters in the alphabet, but
Or as my
listen,
dad said, Al, he calls it Al. He's like, I talked to Al the other day.
Right.
so I named my digital twin Jipitovic, you know, Borhovich, but Jipitovic.
Yeah,
That's
I love
why
it.
that's who I talk to. But listen, we're getting to the meat a little, but before we leave the DTX world, and this is what I love a little bit of your trajectory, right? Because if you think about, you know, DTX as a newly spun up industry, you know, it needed a champion, right? This is the Digital Therapeutics Alliance that, you know, made its huge efforts, you know, from Megan to Andy. And I don't know if you're still sitting on the board of the ATA, but to me, this was the most brilliant kind of combination. And this anchors into that anything new at the end of the day requires many policy decisions, right? And education, which is a key component, both consumers, but also ultimately the prescribers. So, you know, I, again, don't want to comment on you like where you are in the journey of the ATA and DTA, because you used to sit on the board, but maybe talk a little bit of things of getting a new industry off the ground and the leadership that you and others sort of drove that.
Well, and just to be clear, DTA got acquired, merged in with ATA. I still sit on the board and now of the ATA. And so like involved day-to-day basis there.
Awesome.
So, you know, it's interesting. Early days, it's all awareness and like forming, right? Like what does it even mean? And like, what does the industry look like? And what, you know, and that's the early days, because if you don't have language to talk about it, it's not an industry. And so like, you know, I don't know how many conversations I sat through that was about a definition, but like, yeah.
I remember.
I don't know the definition. I know the definition. Like, anyways, so
like
that was early
water.
days. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
there was some storming before the starting to forming. You know, there was some storming. I'm sure disagreements between what is digital health, what is DTX. There was, you know, everybody and their mother published the definitions at one point.
Well, the thing is like early days, given we're healthcare products, you got to do a lot of talking and educating, because like you still are in the background. You're like, you're running clinical trials and you're proving evidence and you're doing things. And like, you really can't show how it works in the wild until you get through all those steps. Right. And so there was much of the early days of the industry was like, let's define the industry while, you know, companies like MedRhythms and others hopefully get through this process. And along the way, you uncover, okay, you need to understand how we fit into workflows. Like, okay, there's a group that spins up that does that. Right. And then it's like, oh, payers. Like, you got to figure out how to get this thing paid for. And then it's like, oh, for most of the industry, you can't. So we created a policy and lobbying arm, and the DTA bill, which never really got through, but still got reintroduced. And, it's still long game in play. The digital therapeutics bill, right? Like is underway. And then it's like, oh, like, how do you prove ROI and evidence? I remember having this whole conversation. And then I remember even Jen and I on my team wrote an article about this for some book that no one read. But that was basically like, many of the ways to prove value is the same mechanism you use for everything else, right? Like, you just need, it's like, we're still in healthcare, you're delivering a health outcome, like the motive, right? So we're like there. And so it's like, where is it brand new, and where can we learn from the other industries? Was the fun part of those days. And then it got more mature, where it's like, okay, there's different types of companies that have figured it out with revenue models. At MedRhythms, we happen to be dermal medical equipment. Like, we have a hardware device, and we're like, let's just fit into that and go get our own Medicare code. And others were there, but then we were saying, well, almost like how, investors will say, well, you're a point solution. Are people going to adopt point solutions, or you need that? Like digital therapeutics was part of a broader virtual care umbrella, right? Like from telehealth to digital clinics to digital therapeutics to digital medicine. And so we said, wouldn't it be great if we had the power of that whole voice to figure out the whole piece of the puzzle? And that's how the ATA conversation.
We need to define it all again. No, I'm kidding. But honestly, I mean, I think Ann Johnson, and I think we kind of tagged her in some other episode just recently. But I mean, she's done an amazing job, taking ATA where it is. And, I'm again, just kind of curious where you see the digital therapeutics, because to be frank, in the last couple of years, it got a lot of punches in the face, right? As an industry, broader industry, from funding perspective, et cetera. Where do you see it going? Or is it sort of, I used to ask the question on it, will kind of pharma eat the DTX, or the DTX will eat the pill? Is the telemedicine platforms gonna just package the DTXs, or the reverse? Will, just kind of curious on where you guys are taking, where's the field going? And what's on the agenda for ATA?
Well, so agenda for ATA, heavy agenda is telehealth flexibility, which is more like baseline that Congress at the federal level keeps pushing every 6 months down the road, right? Like, but having those in place are super important. And then at the state level, like, there's some licensure things that lay the groundwork. The Prescription Digital Therapeutics Act did get reintroduced, and like that is also part of that mix of priorities. Like, how the health of the industry, I think we're in the phase where there's a lot of companies doing it, but maybe not defined as it, right? Like, I mean, like I don't know if I say we're a digital therapeutic. I say we're helping people improve their walking from stroke.
Yeah,
I got
agreed.
I'm sending out, right? Like,
Agreed.
doing the same thing. Freespira, Cala Health, right? There's companies just out there doing it. And it's almost like we've knocked down the barriers of figuring out pathways. And so, the branding might not be, the moniker might not be fully there, but the results are moving forward. And then, it's interesting if you think about the healthcare system, and I even look at it through the lens of the state like Maine. We're the second most rural state in the country. Our hospitals are been taking hits. Our cost structure is pretty high on the healthcare side. I think there's multiple solutions, but a major part of the solution is technology in people's hands, with access to telehealth, with connectivity into the system, such that like we can, treat people where they are, so they don't have to, they can get access to care. Right now, we're the oldest state in the country too, so there's not even clinicians in a lot of places, right? So like, access question is really important, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that with these technologies. And I think that's
the way the life should be, right?
Yeah,
isn't that the
yeah. And like as a state, right? Like, you have a big opportunity because you run Medicaid, right? Like, and you have a bunch of lives there that need care, that are, an hour and a half away from the closest hospital, that you could run some experiments, bringing them technologies to them, for substance abuse disorder, or for mental health, or for others that they might not already normally have.
So, Owen, we're getting now to kind of where you are in your journey, in your life journey. And, honestly, I discussed with different difference on both sides of the aisle, in the middle, how politics today, we as a society, and this is not unique to US, I think it's really globally just, very just, I guess divided in everything from opinions and facts, and getting into the politics, a lot of my friends are like, that's just crazy because you just cannot you literally displease 50% roughly. So you take it, what made you do this? Because you were helping millions of people already with MedRhythms, the larger, umbrella, and I know you love Maine.
Yeah.
And you think the life should be that way. So maybe that's part of it, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. What made you decide to go into politics?
Well, a few things. One is, I do love Maine, and I think the path I had growing up coming from rural Maine I don't think is the same for the next generation anymore. Like we've lost a lot of economic opportunity. Like it's hard to buy a house now, right?
Yeah.
Like the affordability side. And there's a lot of people that aren't ready for back to your words you're hearing, the AI transition, right? Like where we're at, to me, I was looking at these problems being on the board of trustees for the humane system saying, well, people are graduating. I don't know where they're going to work, and I don't know how they're going to buy a house. And I don't know, and I was spending all my time focused on solving those problems. And I thought look, this is a place where my heart already is. Let me go see if I can make an impact there. And that kind of drew me in. You're right. Like my wife, Eugene, says, oh, and it's like you're running at a hurricane right now. Like you're like storm chasing right into the craziness. But I'm like, there's hope because like in the middle of the hurricane, there's calm, right? So you can find the middle somehow.
Listen,
yeah.
And you bring up your wife. Sorry, Jim. Because I'm fascinated with the decision-making process into this, right? Because you then, probably many discussions within the family, right? Like while you're the one running for the governor, I mean, you will be a front. You're a public face figure, and that so I'm sure there was a lot of discussions with the family around this as well.
It was the hardest sale. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, Holly and I talked about it for a while, like think months, not days, right? We went through, we overturned all the rocks. We talked about what it could mean. We talked to people who have done it before. We've got the opinions, and she's excited about she's actually getting more excited about it as we've been in it. And so that trend line, we need to keep going in the right direction. It's good, but yeah, it was definitely, a lot of conversation around that. And, I have two kids. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old, right? So we talked about them. But they're going to love the fairs, at least on the campaigning side, so they'll be okay. So,
But just to maybe just back up, Eugene. So obviously, for our millions of listeners, are in Maine. So you're just walk us through. You're running for governor right now. Where are you at with this?
What's the platform?
Yeah. So my 3 things I care a lot about are affordability, opportunity, and state spending, and make sure we're doing the right things. And so there's like a bunch of stuff within each. We can dive into all those. Yeah. We are 1 year out from the primary, so we have a lot of time. There'll be a crowded field. The incumbent isn't running because they're term limited. In Maine, we don't have a lot of statewide positions, so like everyone shows up every 8 years basically. So we're gonna have there's gonna be like 10 or 12 of us out there running for this race.
Okay.
I'm positioned and come into this as like I'm an outsider of the political world. Like I have not run for office before. But I think we want to change. I'm an entrepreneur, so I can imagine things and build things from scratch. And I grew up in rural Maine, but live in like the business district of the state. And so I think I can mend some or put together some pieces there. It's like if in startup land, I would say that it feels a lot like you're like funding to a milestone. Like in this case, it's like you raise the money to market yourself so people know yourself so you can get enough votes.
Yep.
June and then go to the general election. The only difference is like people start to hate you in this case, right? Like,
it might be the other case too.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah. But the thing, I still spend so much time raising money, but like the max, like donations are like $2,000 a person, and so it's like there's a different dynamic out there. So
Yeah.
Well, I think I was just driving with someone earlier, and they said, well, when you raise money, the expectation is you give something back for it, right? And whether it's the money directly or the services and the benefits of it, ultimately, right, to
Right.
solve a bigger mission. So it's fascinating, and to the point of making other angry. It's funny. I used to say to Marino that I don't wake up, trying to make everybody happy, just you, honey. So then
I
that
love
that one made brownie points all the time. But let's break down, maybe another 10 minutes. Let's break down the three things that you mentioned earlier, just kind of, bite-sized, your platform. And I would love to get your thoughts, because I'm sure you're going to get asked this on the trail, for lack of a better term, on the big, beautiful bill, and just quick thoughts on it. And probably more on the aspect of just from a health perspective and Medicaid, because you're, as a potential governor, that's a big component of it.
Well, let's start there too, right? Like I will say that like I'm watching it, though I'm not in DC and like I'm running for governor.
Understood. Yeah.
So like what I know is it seems like we're gonna have less fed, like Maine, for every dollar we send for the federal government, we get 1.6 back, right? So
Okay.
we're gonna have less, right? Like coming in like on the other side of this. And so as we think about how we run our things, like we're just gonna have to reimagine them, right? And we're gonna have to do it differently. And so that's my engineer mindset says like, okay, that's gonna be there's an input. I don't know where
Problem
it's gonna
solution.
be. I don't know how it's gonna be, but we're gonna have to solve it, right? So that's how I'm thinking about it. Hard to fully comment until it's gonna
Understood. Still
spin
take its
through.
form.
Yeah, perhaps. So on my platform side, let's start with affordability. I think three biggest budget line items for people are housing costs, energy costs, and healthcare costs, right? Like really.
Mhm.
And on the housing side, it's interesting. I've spent a lot of time on this lately. And you're supposed to, this is back to my engineer and me, you're supposed to have 1.1 units per household, right? And if you do that, then you have a healthy market where if you buy something, you can move into something else, and you don't put a lot of demand pressures on it. Maine, we have 1.05 right now. We need to build 40,000 homes, right? Which in a small state, that's a lot of homes to get to the point to have a healthy market. Thus, we've doubled it price cost in the last 5 years, is because that we haven't had that. And so, I mean, the ways that it's largely comes down to two problems: a regulatory problem, like a lot of well-meaning regulations go in place that then the layers of them make it really hard for a developer to get through the process to build.
So the red tape, you're talking about the bureaucracy, the red tape to get anything off the ground.
Yeah. So there's solutions. Like here's one, right? The state, if you take a plot of land and divide it by 3, needs to do a DEP and DOT survey. Like move that to 6, move that to 10, right? Like you've now like loosened it up for certain projects that can move faster, and you can in the DCF of the developers, they can have more time back and make it easier, right? There's a bunch of things like that. We also have a workforce issue, right? Like oldest state in the country. And so I've been visiting a couple of these custom modular home builders, which are actually miraculous. Like they can build high-end, high quality, custom to you. They have a saw that's automated that will take a house plan, saw up the stuff like a Kia would, mark where you should nail it together, and drill the holes. Right? That's a solution to build a bunch of units.
I was waiting for. I knew robotic housing was going to come into play here.
Yeah.
There's you're talking about the pre-built ones that you can also like assemble almost like.
Well, so
I've seen that as well.
Well, they get made in a factory. This factory, one of them I visited, can churn out 10 homes a week, right? So that's a heavy clip. They also build them from the inside out, so you don't need to worry about weather in the middle, right? So it's like, because they're in the factory. And they ship them on a truck and they assemble them on site. But it's not like you would think like, oh, they're cookie cutter. Like they can do any design. Like they did a triangular design they were showing me a picture of, right?
Right.
Which I don't know who wants a triangular home, but still.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. We dust in the corners pretty aggressively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So then energy, right? I mean, we could go through I got the whole list. Energy is another one, right? Like we've had I'm not a like throw out a renewable energy guy, but I'm also like, we got to keep it affordable or the people will revolt, right? Like I think, and so like we've had a solar program that had an unlimited amount of capacity that you could build that then gets subsidized by the other rate players in the grid. And it's like 20% of the cost of electricity is the solar subsidies right now. And so, and we're the fastest growing electricity rate in the country right now in the last 5 years. And so that hurt. If you're my grandmother that lives on fixed income, and her energy goes up by that much, that hurts, every single day, right?
And so what about the healthcare, on the healthcare side? Because that's fascinating. Just your brain coming in and thinking about this with like this fresh kind of entrepreneurial lens.
I'm excited about looking at ways to, like I said, bring more technologies to people's hands. Like imagining what we can cover more in Medicaid to bring things out to people. Like make sure that it like good things are connected into the health systems, right? So that they can get the right people in the emergency rooms when they have them there, and allow them
and the right things to prevent the emergency room visits.
Correct.
Right? Like
we need to strengthen EMS though, right? Because opposite of that is like when there is an emergency, and we do need to get them to the hospitals, and that's been fairly weakened in the state we have like some towns that don't even have coverage. You have to drive people across the border and call 911 to get an ambulance. Right? So that needs to get strengthened. And then I want to do a few advanced primary care pilots. I think that's a really big lever in the long term, like tech-enabled advanced primary care. And then I had one other that I just lost that I was going to be gold. Jim.
You're just gonna have to come back when you win.
Yeah, that's
so
why,
the whole platform.
We'll talk about what we're doing then. Brian. A buddy of mine does this rural cancer initiative, where you like what we've done at the rural hospitals is we pulled out all the services but the emergency room, but like those are the most costly, and you sort of get this downward spiral. But but then you have people like, I have a great uncle that had to drive an hour and a half who wouldn't to get cancer care, right? So this model brings to a nurse practitioner, to your local clinician's office. Telehealth's in an oncologist. If you need to go down for treatment, you do it, but less frequency. And the nurse practitioner is in charge of the care. You both now improve the budget of the rural hospital because they get some of the cancer money, which is a profit center. And you also improve access, to people. And so I think some of those type of things will help out a lot, because it's a dance, because the health systems need money to survive, and we need them. And the payers, the state budget, can't keep taxing people. And so we need to get some of these other types of solutions.
Yeah, the population, it's got, is listening. My first company I built was a distributed kind of infusion care system, right? Where rural parts of Ireland couldn't access, and people were driving back and forth. And, and then the next one was, was about putting devices in. It strikes me that almost looking at all the different models of rural communities out there's so many fascinating things. I think of Canada, Australia, all these different markets where they're distributing healthcare in really novel ways.
Yeah, who's doing the best work on that? Is it Canada, Australia? I would love even case studies on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I because Canada's managed through these regional, through the provinces, so it has different performance in different parts and different provinces. But I think there's I think Canada is very interesting. I'd put them way up there. There's obviously a few projects in Ireland I have to shout out.
I was going to say we should try to find somebody in Canada to get on the shot, so we can connect Owen later. But before we get to maybe Jim's last famous big question, where can people find your platform? Where can they help out?
Yeah,
and we'll do that again later. But
Owen for Maine, www.owenformaine.com is where the beginnings of the platform are, where the website is, where my launch video featuring my Uncle Thump. I have an Uncle Thump. So, and there'll be more, we're 1 year out. So there's going to be a lot of rollout of policy and plans and vision over the next year or so. So stay tuned for all that. So we're just getting started.
Amazing. Jim.
Yeah.
Hope you're ready.
So we're blasting forward into the future, and you're kind of walking through some, what was former cow fields, and you're looking off in the distance, and you can see houses being assembled through robotic systems. And we're about 5 years in, and all of a sudden your lovely partner wife, calls you and say, hey, we've got a phone call. You're being invited to a keynote at the University of Maine, um, uh, regarding how healthcare has been transformed and budgets have been balanced in Maine as a result of your tenure as governor in Maine. So this is, years, maybe 10 years later on. You're absolutely delighted to go back and talk about it. And they want to hear from. They've formed this new kind of healthcare conference. It's being hosted at University of Maine, and you're going to be keynoting it, and you're delighted. And you're up on stage and you're describing all of the, your vision and your policies and how you've brought all your digital therapeutic aspects to bear. And the crowd is enamored, and your Uncle Thump is in the crowd looking at you.
Thump is not going to this conference. Just
He'll watch it over the stream, video stream.
Your 16 great uncles or aunts or whoever you mentioned are also at the conference there. People are just excited. Your kids are now much older. They're super proud of their dad. But you're looking over, and there's this one. You see an entrepreneur, must be an entrepreneur, because he takes off his beats off of his head. He's obviously listening to music and trying to, and he's just encountered with your talk, and he just beelines to you just as you come off of the stage, and he says, "Owen, Governor, Governor, I have to talk to you. I have to talk to you. I'm just about to launch my new digital therapeutic company and music as medicine, and I'm just starting. And I followed your career. I was born in rural Maine. I went to the University of Maine. I was an engineer because I couldn't work in the fields. And I'm now about to start this. And you look at this young version of yourself. What's the one piece of advice that you would give?
Well, framed as a digital therapeutic entrepreneur, I would say start with reimbursement and work backwards, right? So that is it's very narrow piece of advice, but like that's all my time in healthcare, which I didn't start to do, would have been 25% more efficient if we had started from that point. And so I think I would have given them one piece of advice, and then I would have said, look, when you're trying to do something new, and trying to cover ground that no one has covered before. Like there's going to be a lot of people that give you advice, and you're going to need to imagine the world yourself and like how different it's going to be. And you're going to need to trust your gut on what that looks like. And you're going to need to take and make sure the logic is sound of any decision that you make, and that they can connect the dots, because like you're trying to do something no one else has done before. And like, if you, like, as we said before, if you stick to it, like you can be an overnight success 10 years in the making. If you keep that in mind, you work hard and you grind it out, and keep imagining the future you want to create, while making sure the logic is sound.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us on your trail journey. And for all of our listeners and viewers, hit subscribe, pass it on. Hopefully we'll see you next week. And Owen for Maine.com.
Right.
Everyone, good to talk to you.
Take care.